So welcome to the Roxbury International Film Festival. We are so excited to have these amazing filmmakers with us today from the short series Turning Points, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But first, I want them all to introduce themselves and introduce their films, and then we'll get into more of a discussion about the themes in their films and why we sort of chose them to be part of this shorts program called Turning Points. So Dan, I'm going to start with you.
Hello, my name is Dan Lowënstein. I'm a filmmaker from London, and my film and Steve's film, who's to my right, is Becoming Everything.
And do you want to just tell us a little bit about like the making of it, or what sort of precipitated you to make it?
Well, yeah, I mean, Steve wrote it, so maybe it's good if we both speak at the same time, essentially. Bounce off each other. But yeah, basically, it's Steve's script, Steve's world he created, and he asked me to direct it. So we kind of went in together from the very beginning. So the process was very collaborative. We both have our own production companies, and it's a co-production between us. And it's a story about Chris, who's a guy who basically is a normal guy, normal job, loving life, and then out of nowhere, his beloved wife just dies kind of very dramatically, and it changes his complete world. And he's left as a single father with his daughter to bring up. So it's a look at bereavement, at loss, at mental health, at how people deal with this kind of intense reactions and intense kind of moments that happen that are unpredictable in life. And also it looks at, like, I guess from a male perspective, it looks at how men in particular kind of hold back feelings towards mental health and trying to be open with that kind of thing. So like we used a lot of underwater to showcase Chris's internal monologue and his kind of subconscious, I guess. So we had him in different scenarios, like the funeral, like different bits where he was organizing a babysitter, very mundane, normal things. But us as a viewer got to see his internal monologue with underwater shots, which we shot in a place called Tank Space in the north of the UK. And it's, yeah, it was really nice to kind of use the water as your subconscious, because as soon as you're underwater, you're engulfed, you're claustrophobic, but you're also kind of free, I think, when you're underwater. You have a sense of freedom because you lose that kind of, you're in a different world completely. And I think that really helped because as the story progresses, we get hope from Chris's character. And he ends up kind of leaning on his daughter to give him that hope. And his daughter becomes the power, and he kind of lets her give him the power, which I think is really beautiful. And towards the end, we see that he's not healed completely, because that's not possible after losing a wife, but he's getting there, you know? And the only real-time part of the movie is when he's lying on his back in the water. And we don't know as a viewer, is he going to drown? Is he going to kill himself? We're not sure. But at the end, he gets up and he walks away. And that's just kind of enough to show us that he's on the right path. Anyway, I could talk for ages, but I'm going to pass it to Steve, and he can continue from maybe where he got the inspiration from, I guess.
You're on mute.
Hello, hi, I'm Steve. So originally this, exactly everything that Dan said is exactly why we kind of worked together straight away, because we had the same kind of vision for what we wanted to do with this film. This film was something that I was writing years ago, and just before the first lockdown was when we were kind of looking to go in to shoot it. After, in the UK, it was very bad for about 6-7 months, and in between the lockdowns was when we actually managed to film Becoming Everything. And it felt so important because of what the pandemic was then doing as well. It heightened the reason we were making this film, and that was to highlight the struggles of parents that are losing people, somebody that might be dealing with mental health, but you know, everyone around them, even their own friends, don't know this situation. So we wanted to highlight it, but we wanted to do it in a very beautiful way. And that's where a lot of the underwater shots capture the kind of beauty within this story, because it is very hard to watch. It was very hard to be part of, but that was the reason that made this film for us so special, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it really was, and it connects to a lot of these stories that we're going to hear more about, and we'll talk about those themes of mental health, about loss, about hope, about resilience. So Justin, why don't we go to you about your film, The Little Death?
Hello, everybody. My name is Justin Harrison. I'm a filmmaker from Memphis, Tennessee. Go Tigers. My film is called The Little Death, and it is somewhat of a, I guess you can say, an autobiography of the story of my wife and I, our journey with infertility and miscarriage. It's something that happens often, especially, with married couples. 1 out of 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. Most people don't know that. And we just kind of wanted to bring that to life and narrative form, because there's not much dialogue about it, because, mental health is definitely a huge thing, nowadays. And there's a lot of narratives and a lot of resources for it, but there's not much things for people who deal with infertility to grasp, and especially to view, from a cinematic standpoint. So that was kind of like part of the, inspiration to getting that out there. And yeah, it's a love story. I think I shared that the other day. It's a love story. Love stories don't necessarily always have to end with the man getting the girl at the end. It can be, a couple just going through trial and tribulation and what their relationship looks like over the time. So yeah, I'm excited for everybody to see it. I think it's really good.
Yeah, what was beautiful about it, and going back to that theme of sort of resilience, is that, yeah, this couple suffers a really horrible tragedy, much like in Becoming Everything. And it's not what you expect, that there's going to be a breakup and there's going to be like discontent and anger. And, the way that you portrayed you and your wife after that was really beautiful. And it is a love story. And all of these films, and I've said this before in multiple Q&As, but it's a reason why we pick films like this to be part of our festival, because they're beautifully done. They have great stories, but they have great opportunities to bring conversation to a different place and a different space, and that's what we really look for in those in the kinds of films. So thank you, Justin, for sharing that, and sorry for your loss, but thank you for sharing that for us to all be able to have a conversation about it. Jordan, Jordan, do you want to go next and talk about your film, you and Jamad?
Yeah, so I'm Jordan. I wrote and directed the film Superstar. I'm a filmmaker in New York City. Jamad is the amazing lead actor that stars in the film. Our film is about a day in the life of a homeless man in America. And I think that's something that's really not talked about. When you go through the social classes in our country, you could rank them like, white, Black, Asian, Latin, but like literally at the bottom is homeless. They've become the window dressing to our streets, and no one talks about it. There's a stigma too, where it's like a homeless person is on the street because they're the drugs or the alcohol, they can't get out of their own way. And it's just not the case. It's much more nuanced than that. So our film definitely strove to break down those stereotypes and really just put the viewer in a day-to-day of, or honestly one day of like step by step of what that life is like.
Jamad, do you want to add to that as the actor?
No, I think Jordan pretty much hit everything on the head. It's a day in the life of homeless person, trying to figure it out, and trying to battling the mental issues that he may have, that he has, and just on a day-to-day, holding on to hope, so yeah, Jordan hit everything. And
yeah, I know. With this film in particular too, it was sort of the difficultiness and seeing homelessness in a different way, looking at this this character as not someone who we have in our mind. The homeless people are crazy and living in this mental health condition that is scary or whatever. This was like a real depiction of someone who lost something that forced him into homelessness, but still held on hope that he could get back to where he was, and that was a superstar, that was a performer. And it sort of got me, it's like, there but for the grace of God go I, right? It's like at any moment you could be in that situation, and how do you then empathize with that and understand that? I think that's what Superstar did for us. It was sort of like, let's put a real face on this. It could be your brother, it could be your cousin, it could be your friend who one day is up here, you know, and then the next day is living in a tent in the middle of a park.
Yeah, I think that's the thing people don't realize too with homelessness. It's like these people were once a very high level professions, whether it's doctor, performer in our film. It's like they're just, it's almost like we think they're just born homeless, and that's just never the case. There actually is a reason or reasons to what that occurred, and they're much more nuanced than, you know, a drug addiction or something like that.
Right. Exactly. And Mitchka, from around the way. So can you tell us a little bit about your film and the reason behind you making that film?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Mitchka, and I'm a Boston-based writer and filmmaker. So in 2019, I put together a collective of writers and artists, and that was definitely the inspiration for Dudley Street. It was initially supposed to be kind of like a casual show about friends, just creative friends just hanging out. But I guess as I started writing it, I didn't mean for it to be kind of like political or, you know, just have that conflict that it did at the end. But I think I quickly realized that there are definitely some taboo topics that live within the Black community that aren't spoken about. And I guess I felt like I had to address those issues before it became that show that I wanted it to be. So yeah.
So do you want to tell, because of people may not have seen it,
Right,
or yeah.
Yeah. So it's about a group of creative friends, and in the first episode, one of them is introduced to the group, and she ends up hitting it off with another member, and they go off on a date, and later he finds out that she's trans. And it kind of like starts like a beef between him and another one of the members of the group. And he sticks up for her and just like tells him that, you know, I guess in like the simplest way possible, it's not cool to be transphobic or homophobic. And I just feel like growing up, we, or at least just like in this specific community, we were just kind of like surrounded by people who would make a mockery of it, think of it as a joke. But I think now more so than ever, people have come to realize that trans people are people too, and they deserve to be treated as such. And so, yeah, I guess I just thought it was important for me to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of get this feeling, and it's the same feeling, as I said before, with a lot of these films in our festival, that, you know, I mean, you all have something to say and something you want to get across. And oftentimes films, you know, like Justin was talking about too, are very personal, and they all have this sort of tie around mental health. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, because it's something that in the Black community we don't really talk about. We don't necessarily seek help. We want to be quiet in that space around all sorts of issues. And you know, and even with Becoming Everything, she's biracial, the little girl, and that hope falls on her, right, to sort of be the savior of this father and this man, because he can't deal with it. So can we just talk a little bit about that? Can we just talk about how that plays a role in all of your films, and why you feel like it was important for you to sort of bring that forward in this medium? So I'm going to start with Jordan. and this is a dialogue. If anyone wants to jump in and say, yeah, Jordan, that's cool, like I get that, you know, I mean, please do. So we're all here having this conversation together. So Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I think hope's a really key factor in all these films that we're mentioning. I know it is in
Mhm.
mine. I think when people see the film, especially the opening, you kind of have this reveal that this guy's singing, and you think, singing in the bright lights and all this stuff, or he's on stage, and then it's revealed that he's actually just singing for himself at a train station as the camera pulls back, and it kind of like hits you in the head, or in the heart, honestly. And then you go through these moments that are quite sad, but I always look at our ending scene as very hopeful, just because his character was able to gain something that was really important to him as an individual, and it's just those little victories that keeps him going. And I kind of think it's something that we all do, right? We all get out of bed every morning, we're all being up by whatever we're dealing with currently in our lives, but there's something that keeps us moving forward, whether we have a home over our heads or not. And I think that's like the main element I wanted to say with this, that like, yeah, this guy's down and out and dealing with a lot, but he's still excuse me, swallowed the wrong way.
Okay, we're
Right
here.
there.
Jamad can pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah, like I just Jordan said, as far as like the hope, like the microphone, him holding on to like the his life that he's known for the longest, him, having a blossoming career and rising as an artist and holding on to it. And when he finds that last rhinestone, like that's kind of like a, he fulfilled, or he made that perfect mic that he would use as an artist, and his artistry. What was that?
Yep. Hold on one sec.
No worries.
Sorry, background noise. Yeah, no, exactly. So the hope, and I was going to say that too. It's hope. You have this mental health that's going on, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the hope in all of your films. So exactly, and finding that rhinestone, that was amazing. Like the little piece, it was like walking all over the world, and you might as well have found gold.
Yeah.
And that piece and that rhinestone that you put back on your microphone was like that piece to me that was like, now I can move forward, and I found the missing part of my life that maybe will get me out of this. And to me, that brought that I could see the hope in that. Even though the character was going back into the woods to live in the tent, there was still this sense of hope. Like, now I've fulfilled it, I found what I needed, and I can go forward. So, Dan and Steve, because Steve, you wrote it, and it's and thank you, you guys coming live from London. I don't even know what time it is there, so we appreciate you being up at whatever hour.
No problem.
But again, I just it was, and Dan, you're very right. Like in the beginning of that film, I'm thinking, what's going on here? Is he killing himself? Is he using water as a cleanser? And then we see what goes on, and then the little girl comes into the picture, and it's like, wow, okay, now I'm really interested to see what's going to happen to this story. So can you just talk about your decision to focus on sort of mental health, and then using hope as a way to sort of like help us sort of get out of that?
Well, so the idea from Becoming Everything started when I was in a show years ago, and I met a young guy. He was only mid-20s, and I actually met him before the show, and he had two little girls with him. And he was coming to see somebody that we knew. And it was only just before our show went up that I found out that this guy had lost his wife at the birth of their second child. And the whole show, I mean, I kind of wish that I hadn't known it before the show, because my whole show was directed straight to this family, because I watched the guy watching us with his two little girls, and it just blew me away, because I thought, how can somebody be so young? And then it made me think, actually, it doesn't matter what age you are anyway. How can someone go through this, but yet you're pulling so much strength from these two little girls each side of you, that had no idea what they were doing. They were so young that they wouldn't have known that they were pulling this man through this tragic time. And for me, I just kind of thought, this needs to be highlighted. This needs to be shown, because we will unfortunately all know somebody that loses somebody in this kind of situation at some point in our lives. And you may not know that this person is suffering.
Right.
So that was so important to us to make that so obvious, that we're not trying to make a tragic film to show what we can do. We're trying to do it for a reason, to highlight this just small little things that you may recognize in somebody else. And just to show as well that how powerful this daughter in becoming everything is, you know, because without her, there wouldn't have been a film, because he probably would have ended it. You know, that was the kind of road we were going down. So it was so important to us that she was everything, you know, but he, at the same time, is then learning to be a mum, you know, as well as a father. He's learning to be everything to this girl. And it's only towards the end that you realize that she's the one that's everything to him. So we thought that was quite important to try and show.
Right. And the way that you showed it, right, Dan, the way that you guys made the decision to use the water, to use, I mean, the way it's shot and the way that she sort of comes into this space as this hope was really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the use of water was just, for me, like the kind of little icing on the cake, because it's just such a nice visceral kind of really like quite an amazing place to kind of just tell stories in, I think. And since shooting this, I've become quite obsessed with shooting underwater now, and I just shot Swan Lake underwater, but that's a whole different thing. Yeah, I mean,
oh no.
But yeah, it's amazing. It's just, especially, it just makes so much sense with mental health and hope, and you can tell so many different stories in it. And it's just great. I think really Steve's story, obviously, for those who don't know, Steve obviously played Chris. He's the lead actor and the writer. And Steve's performance was amazing, man. He like absolutely smashed it and made told the story in the most naturalistic and most real way I think it had to be told in. There's no overacting, no over embellishing. It had to be on point because it's such a honest and truthful and real subject. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty proud of the film. I hope Steve's happy with the end result, and I'm glad that you guys like it too. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I was amazed. It was amazing because myself and Dan just, you know, Dan actually came up with the underwater stuff when we wanted to do a flashback and we wanted to bring his story to life. We didn't want to do the traditional, you know, going back to, you know, sepia or black and white for the kind of bits where he's struggling. We wanted to do something that we hadn't really seen before, and it was Dan that come up with, why don't we shoot the stuff underwater, you know? And the plan is to take it onto a feature film, and instead of having him just underwater, we build his kitchen underwater with it, you know? And that's kind of where we kind of went from the start, and we just really proud of the film.
Right. And I mean, and for the water, I mean, it could go both ways. It could be drowning or it could be cleansing. So I mean, it's so it's really interesting to use that. Justin, your film is so personal, and you know, sort of like you said, autobiographical and fighting sort of like mental health. I mean, it could have gone in so many different ways, and the choice to give us hope at the end of it is a choice that you made. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So especially in the earlier cuts of the film, pretty much almost everybody I showed it to didn't want it to end that way. They wanted to, well, you know, kind of spoiler alert, they wanted it to end with the car scene. They wanted the film to end that way. But all my films, I want to always try to give some kind of hope to tie it all together, because that's what I'm trying to show in all my films. And the writer just walked in right here. I forgot what I was going to say. But yes, hope. Hope at the end. And just seeing them lay in the grass like that and kind of like just not too focused on the one, you know, point in their marriage that you know was very hurtful, but that wasn't the whole entire scope of it, and that's not necessarily where they're going to remain and where they're going. They're going through it. So that's kind of like what that scene was. They were just kind of like, you know what, you're going to be amazing. You know, it wasn't so focused on what the issue was. So
right, not so much focus on the loss, but I liked that what you just said about it was the focus on going through it. And that's what I felt like, you know, that's a whole nother theme. And we have mental health, you have hope, but that's actually a really great one too, is that it's the focus on going through it.
Right.
You're not going to get stuck there. Right. There's all of your films made us believe that this is just a journey, and it's not an end. And I think that's why we've named it Turning Points. Mitchka, let's talk a little bit about your film and about mental health, about people misunderstanding, about, this character decides to make a decision that he could have lost all of his friends, and he makes a decision to not be transphobic and to actually have a relationship with someone who he actually really cared about and liked, and was like, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah, I think for me it was important for CJ to like hold everyone accountable, because he even says to like Anaya at the end, like, that's your friend and you're not even sticking up for her. And I think a lot of the time when it comes to conflicts like this in a group setting, people would rather just stay quiet than voice their opinions and tell people that, like, no, well, you're wrong, you shouldn't feel this way. And so I thought it was just important to have a character like that who wasn't scared to kind of speak his mind and wouldn't back down just because he was afraid of being judged by people. And yeah, that was the most important thing to me. I feel like CJ represents a lot of people who feel the same way but are scared of that conflict. But I think this just like sets a good example for people to kind of just do the right thing in situations like this. And yeah, I mean, for me, I guess it's just it's more important to stick up for the oppressed than it is to stay quiet and not, so I guess that's just what that character represents for me, and why I chose to, even with the spoken word, it was all about like holding people accountable, because I feel like in the community, people always talk about like backing each other up and like Black Lives Matter, but when it comes to like specific groups within the community, like the LGBTQ community, people tend to like, backpedal and say, well, maybe not them. So
Right, yeah. I mean, it's interesting too, just listening to all of you, I'm thinking about like this kind of like forbidden fear, right? It's like hiding in plain sight, and no one's supposed to talk about these things, right? You're not supposed to talk about homelessness. You're not supposed to talk about trans. You're not supposed to talk about pain when somebody dies. You're just supposed to be okay, and you are going to be okay, because you've shown us that we're all going to go through it. But as Mitchka was saying about, I was just thinking that like forbidden fear, like we don't, and all of your films are bringing us to the point where we have to face it, and we have to think about it. And I just think it's really important that films like yours exist, that people are going to see themselves in all of your films. We all have suffered some kind of loss. We've all suffered, a misunderstanding of people and situations and things. So we have a little bit more time, but I would love to sort of talk about that a little bit, about that forbidden fear that all of your characters in your films are hiding from, in a sense, and afraid to come out because of maybe what society might think of them and might think of that situation. So not everyone has to jump in, but if you have any thoughts about that, I'd love to hear that in your filmmaking.
Well, I think we're kind of almost, especially as males, I think we're kind of conditioned in some ways, maybe not so much anymore, especially in this fresh generation, but especially like a few generations back, it's very easy just to kind of stick to what the norm is and just quiet, keep it to yourself, just do what everyone else is doing, stay in your lane, forget everything else, and just do that. For me, I think that's why in some ways I became a filmmaker, is to tell stories and to kind of like highlight things that aren't necessarily the norm, and just highlight moments of naturalistic, beauty, I guess, in some ways. But it's I think in our film especially, it's got this this character who was very much from that background, not necessarily working class, but like has that normal job, life, 2 up, 2 down vibe. And then he's just massive smash in the face by this crazy tragedy, and that's just shifted his perspective completely, and he has to do something different now, otherwise he won't survive, and he might do something stupid. And like Steve was saying, because of his daughter, that's the only thing that's keeping him away from doing that horrific thing. So I think he has to then face his fears and has to do something completely unnatural. And then without even realizing, his daughter's the strength, and he's there, just bouncing off her. And towards the end, there's a little tiny smile on his face, and we know that's kind of enough. And then we have this dream box or dream catcher that she uses as a form of as her form of therapy to him in some ways, because she's got that maturity, even at such a young age, to kind of show him that you can use these devices to help you get through these things, But yeah, I think that's what our film does for sure, and I think that's what all films should be doing in some way, even the more commercially, minded ones.
Yeah,
I think as well, listening to like everyone else talk about their film as well. I think as just as a viewer and as a human being, we've been so blinkered to not, we've almost been trained to not listen to any of these situations or to not deal with any of these situations, and not even just for yourself, but, you may know somebody that's gone through one of these tragedies, but you've chose to step back at some point. And it's only the more you think about it, you think, we've almost been all, as society, whatever country, wherever you're from, we've been trained to ignore these situations. And it's become such a natural thing that it feels so wrong. And it's so nice to see filmmakers that are highlighting these, because if we're being honest, it comes down to people seeing films or seeing documentaries. It comes from social media, from people starting to reach out that will change that. And that's what's so nice to be part of this group in particular. It's nice that you've put us all in this group, because we're already seeing, all these different situations now that are going to be seen by thousands of people, and it's amazing. So yeah, I am going to watch everyone's film, because it's inspiring as well to be in this category, because it's along with what we're trying to do ourselves. So
Steve, I couldn't agree more. I'm back from my choking fit, but
thank you. I was so worried. I was going to ask. I didn't want to seem
I'm
like
fine.
I didn't
Something
care.
went down the wrong pipe. But no, I couldn't agree more. When we were making Superstar, the thing that I discovered, as you discover all things when you're making films, is that with the homeless community specifically, their fear is not being unseen. Their fear is actually being seen, which is something that we don't usually think about. But what you're just saying about Lily, about that idea, the trailer in our film is actually a cut scene from when Jamad finds the rhinestone, and it's this moment where he walks through this carnival, and literally all these people start judging him, from a little kid who has an ice cream cone to people who are just seeing him. And it was an improvised moment that Jamad did not want to do, and I was like, that's exactly why you need to do it. And we didn't know what it was to become. I knew it would never make the edit, but it made our trailer. And there's moments like that throughout, where he goes to buy something at like a little dollar store, and a woman steps very big out of her way. And Jamad made this great improvisation of saying thank you under his breath. You have to listen closely to it. You probably can't hear it in a normal viewing of it, but it's because the idea of actually being seen is more terrifying, because at this point he's gone used to his day-to-day of like, this is my comfort zone. This is what this is where I'm safe. And being exposed is the most terrifying thing.
And to piggyback off Jordan with the carnival scene, that I think for me, I in that moment I became that much more closer to Martin. Like it just blended. I remember going into that scene. That was a scene that I didn't really feel so comfortable doing it. I guess my ego was trying to get in the way, and I knew I had to get it done. And as I'm walking through the carnival, I had my head down, and I can feel the eyes, I can feel the attention, I can feel the whispers and hear the comments. And, that was me getting closer to Martin and really understanding what it feels like, because I'm pretty sure Martin felt that on his first day going, giving into what his situation is giving him being homeless. So it made me feel that much more closer to, you know, walking in those shoes and understanding what it really feels like to, you know, give in to where, you know, the circumstances and to accept where you are and kind of walk in those shoes a little bit.
It's amazing. Justin, you were to say something.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like, just thinking about women, you know, the embarrassment sometimes they may feel with not being able to conceive or carry or have a baby, because, you know, during our time, it seemed like everybody was getting pregnant. Literally, her best friend, her sister, and like people from church, everybody was pregnant, literally. And like ever since like the beginning of us trying to get pregnant, there's like 3-year-olds now that we know, since, you know, from the initial standpoint. And that's just something that most people don't know that goes through people's minds, you know, women's minds, and also the male too, because in the film, because you also sometimes you just don't get that perspective of the man and how he feels about the loss, about the little death, because oftentimes the man is just so tough and just, you know, internalizes everything. And, you know, in the movie, Keyshawn, the character, he just kind of like just has this release moment when he's by himself. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and all of that, Justin, about how we need to see more films like that, because it's true. It's okay to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to talk about it, and you can't like, I mean, you can feel empathy and you can feel bad, but you also have to help people get through that by having conversations about it and not having it like be a mark because, you know, because that happened.
Yeah.
So Mitchka, do you want to say anything to that? And then we're going to have to stop our conversation, which is lovely.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I definitely agree with what everyone said. I think when it came to facing fears in Dudley Street, both the spoken words from CJ and Janelle were they summed up basically how they felt. With Janelle, she as a trans woman could have just kept like her identity to herself, especially in such a like vulnerable moment where she doesn't know if, you know, CJ is gonna react in a negative way, but she chose to be brave and be honest with herself and him as well. And in the end, CJ could have just gone along with what his friends were saying and kind of mocked her as well. Janelle wasn't in that scene, but he took the initiative to stand up for her, seeing as how she wasn't there. And I think that's like a huge thing. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
That's a lot.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm not like too good at this. I'm still learning.
You're great at this. Love it. So wow, I feel like, you know, this is my dream, you know what I mean? These conversations and using film as a catalyst to conversation is so important to the work that we do. It's important to the work that you do. And, you know, we couldn't do what we do without you. And so we so appreciate your films. We appreciate your work. We appreciate your stories. We will do everything we can to continue to get them out there. But I just appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you being candid. And yeah, I mean, they were just all so beautiful, and we are very proud to have presented them together in this block and given people the opportunity to learn about these stories and now listen to the Q&A. To hear how you made them and why they were so important to you. So good luck to all of you on your next ones, because I know you don't stop. And we hope to see you back at RoxFilm again next year or the year after, however long it takes you. We're here for you. So thank you all for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Truly, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
See you, everybody.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.